All right, I'm here with Max. That's Max. In this video, we're gonna go over some tips that you can use if you have a dog that is a little bit reactive or insecure or uncertain when meeting new people. Max has lunged and nipped at some people. Now, a lot of dogs that do this out of a fearful state. We interpret it as aggression. But if a dog is ever baring its teeth or growling or lunging or air biting you, it's warning you. It's not being aggressive. It's saying, I don't want to bite you. I'm doing everything I can except bite you. I don't like what you're doing. We ignore all these things. We lead the dog right up to wherever it is. So what we want to do is, I'm going to go over a couple of different, this is going to be a little bit of a medley of a bunch of little tricks. The first thing we're going to do is talk about how to greet. So you hear Max he's kind of an adolescent. He's about 1 year old, but he's got a lot of adolescence, juvenile delinquent sort of tendencies. So basically, if somebody comes over and they come into the house, in the house, a lot of dogs are in guard dog mode. Now you're on my turf. You also came in my house. I'm not distracted because I've smelled everything here, so I get to focus exclusively on you. There's only one escape route, only one door. So that kind of amplifies things. So whenever I meet a dog like Max, I met him using what I call greeting protocol 1, which is to meet outside of the house. Outside of the house, what do we have? Distractions. A million amounts of escape routes. And we're not inside his territory. So I've kind of created a little simulation of it right here in the backyard. I'm going to have the guardian. What I've done is I've gone ahead and put some treats. I can see a treat right here, here, leading over to me. So we're going to say that pot, so I'm going to we're going to have the guardian is in a minute going to go over, open the door and point out the treats for Max. The idea is these treats are like $100 bills to dogs. So if they get a whole bunch of treats before they see the person, they're in a pretty good mood. So what I did is I went from the front door of the house, I left this treat trail, and I positioned myself so when the dog came, there was a car kind of blocking. So the dog couldn't see where I was because of the car. So you like to try to position it so the dog doesn't come out the door and see somebody sitting right over there. Now, when I was seated, I was sitting down, because sitting down is less authoritative to dogs, and I had the dog approach me at this end. Not directly from behind. A lot of fearful dogs will bite you from behind, but front-facing is confrontational with the dogs. Sideways is more approachable. So if I'm lower, I don't have as much authority. So it makes me not as dangerous or intimidating to the dog. It gets all these treats, but it can't even see me. And then finally comes around the corner. Right before it comes around the corner, usually have what I call a jackpot, about 5 or 6 treats. So it gobbles them up, comes around the corner, sees me, got a mouthful of really delicious treats. Pretty happy mood. Then you let the guardian bring the dog up to the person. Now, in Max's case, I couldn't see the beginning because I was shaded, but a lot of times you have to kind of stop and point. Here's a treat. You might have to pick the first couple up, but after a while, the dog kind of figures this out. Now, a really great thing to do is set this. You can do 2 things to set this greeting up for success. They're talking to each other now. Is exercise the dog first. Dogs that are better, that are exercised properly, are easier to learn. They're not going to be as reactive and everything else. So give him 10 minutes, whatever the amount of exercise you need to do, just make sure he has 10 minutes of rest before the next thing happens. Now, we can also help the dog practice. We don't typically go into a game. We first practice and learn what we're going to do, the strategy we're going to apply to the game. We do the same thing for dogs. So what I would have you do is I'd have the guardian leave this treat trail that I showed you earlier, out to the front of the house and have Max go out and get those a couple times when there's nobody at the end of it. So now he's doing this activity. He's like, oh, this is just an activity. They leave treats in the ground. I go lick them up. They seem to be happy when I get the treats, and I get to the end and there's nobody there. After I do this 3 or 4 times, then there's somebody sitting there. But the person's not looking at me. Eye contact could be a bad thing for dogs. And also the person is kneeling or sitting down. He's sitting down kind of with his back to me. And I actually was holding my phone out, looking at the reflection of my phone off to see Max. Now what Max's guardian needs to do is make sure he's not pulling or lunging towards. So what the guardian might do is use the clicker that I started showing at the beginning, come out the door. As he's getting these treats, every once in a while I'll say sit. When he sits, his butt hits the ground, click. Give him the treat and say sit. Take a more steps, repeat that a couple times. So he's kind of listening to you. If he comes around the corner and he sees the person starts barking, increase the distance, get to the point where he stops barking, ask him for a sit. When he sits, click, give him the treat and say sit. Take 1 step toward the person, sit, treat, sit, treat. Do that so you're kind of measured approach. When dogs are really crazy, that's when they're going to bite and make the mistakes. If we help them center themselves and focus on and listening to you, they're a lot more controlled. So basically, then you would lead the dog up on a leash to the person's side, and we love to have the dog sniff the person. Now, Max took a little bit of a bite out of me, but it wasn't really a full bite, and I think it was just he was a little bit anxious. And again, we can set him up for success by getting that exercise. And then also, don't do what we did. We had a change of plans, and so we had to have somebody from the house leave right around the same time I got here. I think that created a little anxiety from the guardian. If you are anxious, you will make your dog anxious. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to have the guardian go ahead and let Max out, and she's going to kind of film and watch through the camera if she can. And point out where that treat is.
Max, treat. Max, look.
There you go.
Look, yeah.
And then point out the next one.
Look, the next one. Oh, Max.
Now, he missed a bunch of them, but he already knows me. But you're going to have him on a leash when you're doing this. And if he misses one, call him, have him come back and tap. And again, sometimes you have to pick up the first couple of treats, but if you practice like I talked about earlier, usually by the time you do this, they're happy. Okay, so now what we want to do is, once the dog gets the person, let's say Max is here. Max. So he sniffed me. He thinks I'm in a good mood, but I'm not fully set. So what I'm going to do is, once he sniffed me a little bit, then the person here is going to say, Max, sit. Preferably not with Max this close. And when he sits, they give him a treat. And then maybe roll a treat over there. Sit. Try to avoid saying sit a whole bunch of times. So I like to use a rocking motion like that. Sit. So you want to have the person give the dog a command 2 or 3 times. And the dog complies, and then give him the treat. So now the dog's feeling pretty good. Now, before I get up, I'm going to do it this way. Maximus. Max. So what I'm going to do is sit, give him the treat, and while he's looking, I'm going to roll another treat that way. Then I'm going to rock and get up. I don't want to stand up with the dog right here. I think Max would probably be fine, but it's good to have some distance. That's when that might be surprised and give you a nip. Then what I would do is I would have us walking down the street, and every couple of steps, sit. Now you don't have to use a clicker for this part. You can, but I wouldn't. And saying the sit. This is the person, the guest, is telling the dog to sit. And then you're going to walk, maybe just to the end of your block and back. And twice between every driveway, the person's going to say, Max, sit. Max. That was an accidental. And again, he's going to be much more interested in the person than he is right now because he's more interested in the treats. So then we're going to basically walk maybe 3 to 6 houses, 2 sits in between each driveway, turn around and come back. And by this point, Max should be in a pretty comfortable mood. Then what I would do is I would come in your backyard, even if they're going to go inside, sit down here a little bit. Being outside, again, gives him an opportunity to kind of be on his turf with the benefit of the distractions. And the person should have a whole bunch of treats. Make sure you don't just give them to him willy-nilly. He's got to do something to earn every single treat. And so now he's got to meet the person in a good mood. He's feeling pretty good. And then we got to come and hang out. And every time I sit or come to him, I get a couple more treats. So this is a great way to meet someone and develop a good greeting. And for Max, I think if you can achieve several of these in a row, he's going to start looking at people as not being the boogeyman. When you do this, make sure you don't generalize. So I am a tall Caucasian male with a beard. You'd also look for short, maybe fatter than me, and tall and skinny, and a woman in a dress, and a person of dark colored skin, and a person of medium colored skin, a person with, a Sikh with a turban, people with hats and glasses, all these different variants. Because dogs sometimes, they don't, detachable parts like glasses and gloves and hats are kind of a novel concept to dogs. They don't understand that. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys a little bit of technique. We're all going to walk together, and I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of shaping for something I call quick for looks. All right, come here, Max. Now we have the benefit of over here, we have the neighbors who are working in their yard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this principle of click for looks to get Max to look at them more and more often. So it'd be better if you're shooting kind of right here so you can see over my hand. There we go. So I have a whole bunch of treats in my hand, sit, and I've got the clicker in my other hand. Now what I'm going to do is every time Max looks there, I'm going to click. Now he doesn't realize what he's looking at. It'd be better if somebody was a little bit more present. Now that was a look down. So you have to be very patient when you're doing this, and you don't want to do a lot of distractions other than what you're looking at. So he's more looking at me because then he knows I have a friendly. So let's say that we have somebody out and about, and let's say that we can actually use this tree, even though it's not moving. So let's say this tree represents a person. So what I'm doing is I'm waiting, I've got the treats, and this is gonna be accidental on Max's part to begin with. So I'm gonna move the treats behind my hand, behind my back, my fingers on the trigger. And as soon as he looks at that tree, I'm gonna click and give him the treat. The click is to indicate you did what I wanted. Friendly. So let's say this represents a stranger, somebody you wanna meet. Friendly. The first like 3 to 6 or 7 are gonna be completely accidents. Friendly. And then the dog's gonna catch on, just like it seems like he is there. Every time I look at friendly. Now, when we're doing this, the person should be completely still, and it'd be nice if they're kind of about this position, sideways, but not front facing. So maybe from about like your 10 o'clock to your 8 o'clock, somewhere in that zone. And so basically, every time Max looks at him, you click, give him the treat, and you say friendly, or if you know the person, you can actually say their name. So Jerome or whatever it is. And so now I hear Jerome, I associate with getting all these great treats. And so after a while, the dog starts looking at Jerome as a good thing. Now, one of the things the guardians notice is hand movement seemed to be a trigger for him. So what we can do for that is create a situation or an exercise where the hand movement is a positive. But before we go to that, let me finish this one up. So when you're out on a walk and you see somebody walking towards you, I would, if I could, walk into somebody's yard or walk across the street, always increasing the distance. The more distance you give the dog, the more comfortable they feel. And then we just wait. As soon as he looks at the person, if I'm not going to meet the person, I would just say friendly. Friendly just means a friendly person. Somebody that you know, we're going to say their actual name, or a dog, or whatever it is. So then the person just looks. You want to get about 10 or, anywhere. It depends on what the situation. Some situations you might only get 1 or 2 clicks. Other situations you might be able to sit there and get 10 or 15. Depends on how well you know the person or want to know the person. But eventually the dog is just looking at the person. Now, also what the dog is doing is in disengaging. Now, as a dog, if somebody wants to, what we all do, we're bipedal, because we're from the chimpanzee and the ape family. We walk on 2 and we have 2 to do. Dogs do not have 2 that are free to mess around with. So we interact, we reach for dogs. They really don't reach for each other. So what I would do is if somebody wants to meet him, first of all, it'd be better to have them sideways and have Max come to them. It's a polite thing for the dog to approach the human. If the dog won't approach the human all the way, the dog is saying, I don't want you to pet me. What do we try to do? We try to pet him anyways, because we think that as a human, petting is the way we say thank you. If I don't want to be petted, and what dogs do is they'll turn their head to the side. So we reach to pet him and the dog goes like this. The dog's going to say, I don't want you to pet me. What do? We pet him anyways. Well, eventually the dog's going to have a bad day, and then when that happens, you put a little bit of his poop there and he won't dig in that hole anymore. And so what happens, the dog's like, man, people just touch me, they touch me, they touch me. One day I'm in a crappy mood, and a person reaches and pets me, and I snap at them. What do? They backed up. Oh, so if I don't want people to pet me, just snap at them and they'll move away. So what we want the dog to understand is, if people will reach to pet him, sit. Let's get a sit first. So if I want to reach to pet him, I'm going to stop about an inch. See how he reached towards me? I reach to pet him. Now, and he can, just like humans that are dating, he can say no at any point in time. So if I start reaching for him, he turns his head away. That's his way of saying, I changed my mind. The more situations you put him in where people listen to him, they put their hand in front, it'd be better, again, sideways. And if he reaches in, then they can reach and pet him. And for guests, I would have guests pet him here on his chest or under his chin, never reach over the head. So the idea is, again, we're creating a situation where he's like, when people approach me, they listen to what I say. They don't try to touch me without me wanting to. So I feel more confident with this. Before I meet people, my guardians set me up for success by getting me some exercise. So I don't have as much oomph. And then I also, maybe it's somebody that's hard. Well, maybe we just practice meeting the click for looks that we just talked about, and I meet them a couple times. Max, can you catch? Can you catch? Do you know?
Kind of.
Sit.
Let's see. You might be able to do it. Oh, nope.
So if you want to teach your dog to catch, what you want to do is you'd have your son sitting next to him, and then you go like, if you notice, I went like just one. A lot of times we go 1, 2, and the dog's like, oh, where did it go? And then it hits him in the head. So just throw one like this, and try to throw it so good so all he has to do is open his mouth. Now if it hits his nose and hits the ground and he looks it up, he has no motivation to catch. So your son would then grab it and hold on. The only way I catch it get it is if I catch it out of the air.
Uh-huh.
This is a wonderful game for you to have guests play with the dog because you can have enough distance for you to feel comfortable and for the dog to feel comfortable, and they're still engaging with the dog. All right, what's the last thing I was going to go over? I'm drawing a blank.
Oh boy. We
Talking
talked
about this, the click for looks.
Click for looks.
Well, I guess it's the greeting stuff. So
Yeah.
I guess I've already went into it. So
Okay.
what you want to do is, again, when you meet people, you want to set up scenarios where, again, it's a good positive situation. Like there's a dog walker that came by and he kind of snapped at me. So if a dog is stationary, and was the snapping inside or was it outside?
It was inside.
So inside, again, I don't have any distractions.
She didn't announce herself. She just walked right inside.
She just walked right inside.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So he was protecting his
That's not
territory.
a good idea for anybody,
Yeah.
but a dog walker, and she might, like I said, she might have just thought that you wanted her to come in because the door was open or whatever, just
Yeah.
come up with a relationship. And once the dog knows the person, she's gonna be fine with it. But the idea is we want to create these situations where meeting the person is a good thing. I remember what the other thing I wanted to talk about, the hand movement.
Okay, yeah.
So what we want to do is, if the hand movement is something that causes him to not to bark or just disagree, we want to make that a positive for him. So what I do is I break it down into small steps. So like this maybe gets a bite. Well, I don't have to go straight to this. What I could do is I can go like this. So what I'm doing is I'm preceding the thing that he doesn't like in a small step, and I'm helping him practice the first step over and over. So reach, treat, reach. That was not a good click, treat. So now when the hand moves, then it pulls away and then I get a treat. Then the hand moves a little bit more and I get a treat. And then it moves even more and it pulls away and gets a treat. So eventually you go, and he doesn't care because that hand movement means somebody's hooking me up with a treat. So instead of snipping at the person, or like, hand movement? Who's paying me? So you can do this with people standing up. Sometimes people cough. Sometimes you have somebody come in your room. He's cool with them, and as soon as they stand up or cough, he barks at them. I didn't give him permission to bark. Sit. Now, part of this is because he thinks he's in charge, and some of the other stuff we went off camera. This is probably too long a video, so I'm going to go and summarize this one up again. But pick and choose your battles and set the dog up for success by exercising it first, doing click for looks if you need to, doing the treat trail, or a combination thereof. And if it's an individual motion, break that motion in a small step, stop the step, treat. A little bit more. But when you're doing this last step, the action stops and then he gets the treat. If he barks or lunges, we push too far. The whole point of it is break it into small individual steps, and he does not get, he only gets rewarded for not freaking out. And if you do it right, after a while, he's like, I like it when people give me the jazz hands, because I'm about to get a treat, or stand up, or whatever it is. Maxwell, come. Sit. Sit. Remember, click for the action. Well, this is my buddy Max. And these are some tips and tricks you can use if you have a dog that's sometimes wary of meeting new people.